Welcome to the Real Advisor Podcast, TRAP, TRAP. Please follow us and join in the conversation on Twitter @Advisor Podcast, where you can suggest ideas and themes you'd like the TRAP team to discuss. Also remember to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel and leave a 6 out of 5-star review on iTunes. Doing all this really helps us, which means we can do more to help you. Now let's head over to the studio for the latest pile of TRAP.
How would I design the ideal financial planning practice? I have mentioned this before. By the way,
2 days a week.
Does that not sound ideal? And I know we're talking from the position of having mature businesses, so maybe we're projecting that onto our comments here. I know that it's very hard to go out on your own at the moment with the FCA and they're getting through their vetting process, way harder than it was when myself and Andy went out on our own, a decade and a bit ago. SJP is a route, of course. There are quite a few SJP people.
You underestimate the power of the dark side.
Quite a few SJP people here today. They're going back to Coruscant tomorrow. The Emperor's calling them. There's something with their charges. He's not happy, Palpatine, having a rage. What would I do? Well, it's pretty much what I did, to be honest with you. So I set out in 2008, and Stephen Covey, right? The 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. I only learned 1, which is why I'm sort of moderately successful. The other 6 I couldn't be asked with. But the one he had that resonated with me was begin with the end in mind. And when I set out in 2008, I began with the end in mind. I just did the metrics. And I'm amazed more people don't do this. I worked out what lifestyle I wanted, how much I needed to earn gross to get that lifestyle, because nobody lives off net. Nobody lives off gross. We all live off net, right? We live off net. I worked out what we had to get gross, netted that down, took the tax off. Okay, that will support my income. To get that level of my lifestyle, to get that level of gross income, I need X number of clients generating Y fee. That gives me Z turnover. I'm going to build backwards to build a business to give me that turnover. So I did that. That'd be the first thing I do, is get the metrics down. Have a plan of where you're going, right? Begin with the end in mind. And then I work out your why. Okay, for me, it's giving people money, peace of mind. Okay, it sounds trite. Maybe it is trite. But that's what I do for people. I don't want high net worth. Generally, they're a pain in the arse. They're never happy. They'll never give you the whole slice of the cake because they've got a retinue of advisors. By the way, you mentioned Chris Emmett as an offshore advisor. I've got to mention Richard Holmes as well again because I got a commission share with both of them. But only if I mention them both. But the high net worth guys, they've got a retinue of advisors. You'll never get all of the cake. I want mass affluent people who are never sure if they've got enough. That's my target market. Home counties, coming into retirement and just want someone to say, Nick, are we going to be all right? Know your target market, know your why. Metrics first, then know your why. And the third thing, and this has become more important to me, and again, maybe it's with the benefit of having a mature business, but just learn the not for me principle. When you are talking to prospects, they think they're vetting you. That's rubbish. You're vetting them. You are vetting them. If you bring these people onto your bus, you are driving them to financial nirvana for the next 30 or 40 years. And if they're a pain in the arse, it's hard to kick them off the bus once they're on it and you're traveling down that road to salvation. Trust your gut instincts and turn away as many referrals as you're taking on, which kind of ties in with what Alan said about, I'm not interested in help. Someone's got an Australian superannuation pension that he wants to use to pay off his Swiss mortgage.
I'll give it a go.
Because he's selling his company in the Seychelles. Yeah, I'll give it a go.
Give it to Clearworth.
I'll give it a go. I'll give it to Paul Clearworth there. Just be really... And again, the art and the science of our thing, and people think, well, human intuition, that's rubbish. There's no such thing. I'm telling you, it's strong. If you don't like somebody within the first 5-10 seconds of meeting them, you probably aren't going to like them. And I don't like most people within the first 5 seconds of meeting them. I mean, I've really honed it down.
We don't like you.
Yeah, well, it works both ways, pal. Yeah, so and be totally comfortable with turning people away. And then in the end, you will get a client bank. Sorry to use these pejorative terms. They sound pejorative, but they're human beings, but you know what I mean. You'll get a client bank of people that like you like them, and they'll start referring people that they mix with, because like mixes with like. And if you've got clients you like, the chances are you're going to like their friends, and they're going to like you in return. And you get the referrals off that. Have a scarcity mentality. Don't be worried about saying no to people, because the door will open and someone else will come in. to have a really good I've got a lifestyle business. Andy, to a degree, has a lifestyle business. We're solo advisors. I really am a solo. It's just me. I outsource everything. It's just me. It's a lifestyle business. I only want to work with people. I never want my phone to go and think, oh, Christ on a bike. Him again. Her again. Divert. Because we've all been through, I'm sure we've all worked in companies that are like that, right? You can create a business in your own fashion where all of your clients you like, most of them become friends, and most of your friends will eventually as well become clients. And that's what I said. Know your metrics, know your why, and turn people away. It sounds counterintuitive. That's saying to the younger advisors who are here thinking about doing it, because they won't be told that. It'll be about sales cultures. You may be buying in leads. Christ on a bike, God help you. It's going to end in tears.
There is billions and billions and billions in default funds at workplace pensions. Back to your point, Nick, your real life client example, that is what I call a 6-figure tick box. Had he ticked the right box at age 29, as you said, he would have been hundreds of thousands of pounds better off. That's a 6-figure tick box to tick one box. It's insane. He got no help at that time. So now you've come into his life and obviously nudged him to invest in the right fund at work, which is going to create another load of 6 figures in the future because he's invested in the right fund, because you've spoken to him like a grown-up and explained that returns all come from global equities.
But imagine if the tick box said, do you want a high return fund or a lower return fund? Which one?
Yeah.
Right? That's a starting point.
Important.
That's a starting point.
Yeah.
So you go, I'll have a high return fund, and then the next thing you say,
it's slightly more volatile.
It goes up and down, but you're not touching it for 20 years, but it's a little bit more volatile as you go through.
I'll give you the actual data on this, yeah? The last 10 years, 100% global equity fund versus a 20% global equity fund. If you started off with £10,000 in the 100% global equities versus 20% global equities, if you started off with £10,000, today you'd have £25,000 in your 100% global equity portfolio. In your 20% global equity portfolio, you have 13,000. The gain of 100% global equities is 15,000 from a starter of 10. The gain from 20% global equities is 3,000 from a starter of 10. The returns are 5 times as much. That's real data from 100% global equities versus 20% global equities. There's real money that people are leaving on the table, and it requires no change of their behavior or lifestyle. They don't need to do anything or pay more money in. It's a temperamental thing where they have to be calmer, having a higher allocation to global equities. The money is there, and you're right. Creating money for the sake of it is not cool. But then you have more freedom, more opportunity, and you can do stuff with it. So it is an absolute travesty.
That is a great point. And you know what I think? The more I think about this is these tools and templates and regulations have been devised by institutions who are so far removed from the end customer, they think they're doing them a favor. Because what you just quoted some numbers there, and it just, there's some numbers, and they are around the level you might expect if you were an informed person in this sector.
Oh, sorry. To close that story off.
But the point of it is how that impacts on your life. So we are the ones who are in the inner circle of the family's life, and that's the point. So the people that are creating these questionnaires are not. So we're seeing the impact of that between having 3 times the return. 3 times the amount. That is the difference between having, an extra holiday, helping your grandchildren, paying the extra VAT on your grandkids' school fees, and being barely able to afford to live yourself. That's the real life impact for real families.
Oh, sorry. These investing illiterates that create these things, as I mentioned, the 100% global equity portfolio versus the 20% global equity portfolio. The ridiculousness is they call the 100% global equity portfolio, they call that high risk. All it does is create wealth. They call this one low risk. It's totally mad. In my world, that's high risk. The one that produces no returns. That's the real risk. Low returns. That's the problem. That's what I'm trying to fight.
Yes, it's a mess. And I do appreciate as well, if you work like Carl says, he's got quite a big team now. It's growing all the time. And if you're an IFA working within a firm, or you're a TRAPist listening to this and you work within an IFA firm, you might be told what to do. But as much as you humanly can, make the risk assessment question. If you have to use it, just the starting point for an informed conversation where you begin the process. And it's a never-ending process. It never finishes, of educating the clients about how markets work.
Most advisors follow the result verbatim.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
Insane.
And by the way, I think regardless of what sort of size you are as a business, it's reasonable because you've got to have a framework to to follow these things. But it doesn't mean, and that's the key thing, that the advisor, regardless of whether there's 1, 3, 5, 10, 1,000 advisors in the company, has to then just say, right, you're a 6 out of 10, I'll give you a 6 out of 10. You've added zero value then through that conversation. So you need to, that's the starting point. That's your framework. And now let's have a grown-up conversation.
It's the financial plan. The financial plan all the time tells you know,
I don't have
where the money should go.
I don't have the data from other large asset managers or DFMs, but I have read the St James's Place annual report. And as a big firm, close to 200 billion, I think the global equity allocation is around about 70%. And that is impressive considering how large they are. I don't know what other asset managers and DFMs, what their percentages are.
Agreed.
But again, it's another term that is used to trap the wealthy, wealth preservation. Why on earth would you want to preserve your money? You want to grow it. But again, it's another honey trap for the wealthy illiterates, wealth preservation.
We're all quite, I suppose, shaken up by it because we trusted these so-called experts. It's well documented. I've spoken about it in the past. Outsourced a lot of investment management to Nick's friends at what they call posh DFM or the equivalent. And but the point is, it's like a lot of things in life. It's you've got to do the work. If you think you can, I don't know, read a couple of articles or even go on the DFA foundation course and you think you found the salvation and solution, there's no shortcut to this. You have to, I do feel now, one of the few things I do feel very confident about in my life, if I sat down with a prospective client and they asked me to justify our thought process and why we do what we do, I would be able to confidently articulate and even share the journey that we've been on, why we've done it. And I'm just saying to anyone listening to this podcast, this episode is not a quick fix. This episode should encourage you to go and learn more. Do anything in life. You can't borrow someone else's experience. You're going to have to do it yourself. I think.
Yeah, like another way of putting this, right, is you've done the evidence-based research. You've looked at what's the best for your clients going forward. And anybody, say our Morgan Stanley friend who said, prepare for a 10% correction in the market, or your floating rate note bonds or whatever, right? So take your own life savings and you have 3 options, A, B, and C. You're going to go into long-term, buy the whole market. You're going to put your life savings with Mr. Morgan Stanley because he said it's going to go down 10%, or you're going to put it into a floating rate note bond, right? And I'd ask Mr. Morgan Stanley man which option he would go for. And I know it wouldn't be the gamble that between now and the next 3 months, I will. Which is
the other thing as well, which everyone needs to be wary of, and our clients need to be reminded of, is that all these people with their forecasts and stuff, they've got a different agenda. They're not worth listening to at the best of times. Correct. They don't understand your circumstances. And also get that clearly has achieved column inches. We know for a fact if you predict anything, particularly doom and gloom and negative, you are likely to be picked up by the press. And eventually some of the stuff, that's the point, they will be right. Oh, Mr. Morgan Stanley predicted 10%, and 10% surely came along. If he says it every, often enough, that will happen. But it's an entirely different.
It's correctly called 10 of the last 3.
But it's an entirely different thought process and agenda. And one thing that I will say, as well as it refers to an investment philosophy, we continue to have investment committee meetings and the agenda. We've got an agenda. We have third party support comes in and helps us and guides us through this. Agenda item number 1 on every investment committee meeting is: does this stuff still work? Is there any new evidence which has come to light, which makes us pause for reflection, makes us explore a bit more? Whatever your deeply held beliefs are, you should always be open to challenging them or looking for new evidence to come to light. In all the years we've been doing it, despite the fact that's on the agenda, every now and again something does come up. To be fair, there's a paper written by someone or other. Say, interesting. Let's explore further. And without exception so far, it's been, it's a 6-year data set. It's not long enough to, or whatever, or it's they've got confused by something. There's never been sufficient independent, research or data to make us change in any way our investment philosophy. But I think that's important to do. Don't just continually just say my way is the best way, all the rest of you are stupid. Be prepared to challenge your current thinking.
Now, they quoted the past historical returns. A £1,000 investment in the iShares 100, so the FTSE basically, which hasn't exactly been a stellar performer in the last decade, but even £1,000 invested in the FTSE 10 years ago would now be worth £1,851 compared to £1,137 generated by the average cash ISA. Not quite double, but heading towards that in a decade. And that's just compared with the FTSE 100, which had you compared to maybe a global equity market would be significantly different. So as I titled that LinkedIn post, it's that slow motion wealth destruction in real time. There's a fundamental issue at heart in the UK. I think it was a few people from Ireland also commented, Carl, to say it's exactly the same over here. And I thought it was a good point because this is the stuff we all try to do. We try to educate our clients. We try to sort of translate this information and explain that it's not about risk and there's a different set of risks that you are exposing yourself to if you keep high cash balances. But seeing those numbers was actually quite startling, and the post got a lot of engagement from other people. So who wants to go next in terms of your actual thoughts on the subject?
I'll go just to kind of segue in, and the Irish experience is even worse, Alan, I would say, because at least there were some kind of deposit returns coming via the UK cash accounts, whereas here the pillar banks were, giving the pillar banks being Bank of Ireland and AIB, all the other banks left, so we're left with those two and Permanent TSB, and they basically were not giving any returns at all. To the extent that their latest profit numbers that they announced during the summer, they admitted that basically, yes, we have some term deposit rates, but people aren't transferring over to them. So you have this general apathy to Carl, go and do stuff. Yeah.
Because they were giving zero returns, incentives drive behaviour. Did that not then have a knock-on effect? People saying, well, I'm getting bugger all return on my cash. What else can I do? Oh, is this thing called the stock market I'm going to invest? Or did it have no impact?
I would say zero impact, and that's proven in the numbers. So the amount on
that's
deposit
quite telling. Even when it's at its most extreme, there's no change in behaviour. So hence we have a fundamental problem.
Yeah. So there's a couple of reasons for that, right? Number one is you guys have no idea what the financial crisis did to Ireland, right? And we were just all loaded up with masses and masses and masses of debt. So there has been a massive cultural shift that if we have a financial crisis or recessions or whatever coming down, we're going to be in much better shape because people have gone, don't think that debt thing, it's very recent history. There's a number of people in business who were affected by it and will never make the mistakes again, me included. So I think that's one of the reasons for it. And then another reason is, I can access better returns in cash. So I'll get onto the investing piece in a sec, but I can via European banks because we're all part of the EU, right? But Jesus, if I haven't heard of the bank, if I don't know the name of the bank, I'm not going to do it. So that's kind of led to the money just sitting there. But I think we've a long road to go to educate people in terms of investing for the long term. And I know my kids are interested in this, but they do not do anything about it in school at all. So this goes back to the curriculums at school first and foremost, and try and generate. And I know, Alan, you've spoken about, talking to your kids about, well, what do you use? You use, you have an Apple iPhone, so why don't we invest in Apple? And stuff like that is really, really good to get engagement and to look at kind of investing in over the long term. And of course, we have this massive problem here that the younger folks can't get on the property ladder. So if we can, start this culture of investing as opposed to the culture of saving, well, then but we need to take a very long-term view on this, right? That's 10, 15, 20 years down the line. We would, of course, see the fruits of the labor in terms of the education if we could get people to invest. We don't have, you mentioned a LISA earlier on, Andy. I never actually heard of that. But, we have nothing like that. But we did before. it was called the SSIA. You put in 200 quid and the government topped it up by 25%.
That's exactly it, yeah.
The whole country had an SSIA. Now, you could have an investing one or you could have a cash one, but I think the vast majority were investing ones. I was a broker consultant for an insurance company back in those days, and I was literally going around with wheelbarrows, like saying, yeah, load them up there, let's go. And it did help people, but it was for a particular period of time, and then it stopped and we didn't go back. Probably financial crisis kind of put an end to a lot of that potentially reoccurring. But now when we're awash with money and the banks have so much money in on deposit, like we're talking, I would say the per head numbers are higher here in terms of cash being held. This is the time now to strike, and this is the time to introduce it. And I had advocated for something like this a couple of times pre-budget. It didn't get much traction because these are longer term measures, but this is the kind of stuff that we need to introduce. And, I hearing about the Hargreaves Lansdowne cash management tool, etc. These are the kind of innovations that we need. And unfortunately, the big problem we have here is if there's very little innovation and very little competition, well, there's not much incentive for the people who are here at the moment to make any changes because they're making shed loads of money. The pillar banks, just call it straight, they're making absolutely tons and tons of money in terms of profits by not encouraging anybody to do anything at all. So, we've lots to do. Obviously, the exit tax that we spoke about earlier on, that's also a big problem. So I think there's really quick wins to have a really serious long-term impact and make this a better country for everybody in the long term.
Let's move on to the meat and potatoes of episode 53 of the Real Advisor podcast. For those of you watching us on YouTube, you can see I'm now struggling with I struggled with my 4s. I'm now struggling with my 5s on the high-tech digital whiteboard behind me. The meat and potatoes today was inspired by a guy called Robin Wigglesworth, who's a writer for the Financial Times, and he had an interview recently with Dr. Gene Farmer, the architect really of something called the efficient market hypothesis. Interesting article. It is behind a paywall, but there are sites that enable you to go behind paywalls. I'm not sure whether I should be boosting them or not because I'm a bit dubious about how ethical that is, because that is some company's IP. Anyway, it's an FT article. He interviews Eugene Farmer, who is 85 years old, won't be around forevermore. He's still as tetchy and as driven as he ever was. An interesting guy. And of course, Farmer is famous for the efficient EMH, the efficient market hypothesis, for his work with Ken French on the 3-factor model, the size and value premium. And I know that we are all big fans of and they hate this phrase, but I'm going to use it as a catch-all, passive investing, index investing, and the dimensional approach to it, and the work they do in terms of education for us as advisors, and then stuff that we can give on to our clients. They just throw it at us. Everything is ultra transparent. But the efficient market hypothesis is one of those lightning rod subjects that seems to agitate as many people as it excites or convinces. And Robin Wigglesworth, I put a link to it in the Circle show notes. He put a LinkedIn post referring to his article, his interview. 112 comments the last time I checked on this, and a lot of them are slating the efficient market hypothesis. And I'm going to read a couple of these out. Some of these people are right in the weeds, and they probably don't have a big circle of friends. It's not a theory, it's a hypothesis, as Farmer himself points out. It was disproved in the 3-factor paper. Kappa and beta has a T-squiggle stat of squiggle 0.8 and only squiggle 1.2 when combined with size. That is far below the T-stat of 2 required. Blah, 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 blah. These people go on and on. Somebody else says, EMH had a lot of assumptions that have to perfectly align like the stars for it to come out true. In real life, it never works out for individual stocks. Now, I think there might be a disconnect between what I certainly understand EMH to be and what its detractors say it is. And so I want to quickly go through it, and then we'll just bounce this around the room, because in my business and in what I do for my clients, and then this thing of ours, for all 4 members of the Trap Pact, DFA played a major part in our progression, and I think they had a lot of value. And it's obviously built around the work of Farmer and French. So what is EMH? And in my simple mind, I try and keep things simple, right? Because I'm not, I've got a P-shaped brain.
this is my definition of it. Eugene Farmer wrote this paper back in 1965, The Random Walk of Stock Prices. Long story short, and he is very mathematical. And if you ever see photographs of him in front of his blackboard, it looks like something, it's just like a word vomit with some brackets thrown in. Just incredible formulas. My understanding of it is that basically what Farmer said all those years ago, and he's won the Nobel Prize in economics for it as well, is that it's really hard. All the aggregation of all the players in the marketplace, all the now, certainly, but back in 1965, but now with the computing power, the algorithms, the analysts, it's very, very, very hard to find a security, a slice of equity in a company that is not appropriately valued. Everyone's going through balance sheets all the time. And that's to me, that's what it is, the efficient market hypothesis. And on the back of that, of course, that very simple statement, you've had this rise of the index funds, which kind of proves that, well, something is right here, because it's very, very hard to beat the market in aggregate. And we every year we see these reports that are coming from Standard & Poor's and so forth that just show how many active funds, especially in the very developed markets like the US and the UK and Japan, it's really, really, really hard for these active fund managers now to outperform over any sustained period of time, which to me indicates the efficient market is very, very efficient. I think where people get confused, or maybe I'm wrong on this, but the detractors of the EMH say, well, it's not efficient because you get things like the tech bubble and you get these booms and bursts in the market, therefore they're not efficient. And I don't think by the way, in the interview, Gene Farmer's very honest. He said, there's only ever a hypothesis. It's an evolving work in practice. But I don't think Gene Farmer ever said that markets are rational. The EMH is not about that. To me, the efficient market hypothesis, and which underpins all of DFA stuff, fundamentally underpins how Vanguard has done so well, and the index trackers, is that markets are ruthlessly efficient. You can't find these mispriced securities. You're better off buying the market in aggregate. And then if you want us to stick a bow on it, you can then delve down into the size and value premia. Now, that's a bit more debatable because those premia disappear for long periods of time, as we all know. But certainly the EMH, in terms of finding an undervalued security, to me works.
What are the demographics? I understand, because as you were saying earlier, you would old gits like me would think, oh, this is all the youth, the youngsters who are on YouTube, but not necessarily. You get a lot of of a certain demographic which are very interested in financial planning. But even give us a sort of rough idea in terms of numbers. I know you get a lot of leads, a lot of inquiries through this. If you can just share some of your data.
So I'm just opening my analytics now. But just, I guess, starting off with YouTube, again, when I started out on this journey, I thought very much like you. I thought that if you're making finance content on YouTube, you're just going to get a load of teenagers looking for crypto advice. But actually, my audience over the last 28 days, so it's 90% male. YouTube is very much a male-dominated platform. The average age of a viewer is about 50 years old. So 50% of my audience, 50% of my views come from people that are above 30. I have 15% of my audience are older than 65. The thing is that if you make retirement planning content, there is enough older people on YouTube that you can get in front of millions of people, right? There is obviously a ceiling, perhaps in the UK, and I'm perhaps touching on that in terms of the people that are actually interested in this content, because they have to be interested in it, in searching it out, or the algorithm needs to think that they're going to be interested enough to serve them up that content. It's very much an older demographic, but then again, it's a sense that the people that I know how to help the most are typically people that are wealthier, that are closer towards retirement, but also those are the clients that we're also typically looking for. So these things just marry up. Then in terms of what effect this has had from a lead generation perspective, so this has been going pretty exponential for the last 3 years. But at the moment, run rate and just to sort of give listeners a little bit of a context, but I have a link in the bottom of my videos, and I would encourage people to go and check it out just so they can see what I'm using. I'm using a fantastic bit of software called Video Ask, which is basically like a form, an online form, but instead it's me, a little short video of me where I ask someone a question, find out a little bit more about them in terms of whether they're based in the UK, how much money they're earning, what their assets are, explain a little bit about our business and how we do things, see if they're looking for one-off advice or ongoing advice. And if they ultimately qualifying the lead, and if they qualify, then they can book some time in one of our advisors' diaries for an initial call. I used to do those initial calls myself, a lot of them myself, but I've now stopped doing that. They now go straight on to the other advisors here at Nova. And we typically get about 120 of those calls booked into our advisors' diaries a month.
That's insane.
Through which we end up with about 60 initial meetings. So that's initial meetings. And then from that, we end up signing probably between 20 and 25 initial clients come on board every month. And a rough average asset size is about 700 grand. That's pretty much it. So yeah, it's significant.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah, it's
amazing.
Yeah.
It just shows you. But ultimately, all credit to you, James, because if you go back 4 years and you've got two viewers, and you keep going and you keep going and you keep going, and it just shows you once again what we all know: the power of persistence. Just keep going.
It's
incredible. Congratulations.
It's one of those
That's
things.
really, really amazing.
Thank you. Well, it's one of those things that I think that a lot of people look up to people in my position, being a YouTuber or an influencer, whatever, thinking, oh, I'd love to be that. That would be fantastic to have that job. But what you often forget is the sacrifices that have to have been made, and how, just like you guys run your own businesses, I have been working for 6 days a week for 12 hours a day for the last four years, up until I had my son last year. And now I work 7 days a week, including him. So again, it's like he has to sacrifice a lot. Like my wife has put up with a lot. My family has put up with a lot, with me being so obsessed about this goal and this ambition of putting in all this effort. So yeah, it's been great to see the hard work has paid off.
The trouble with all these, and I am going to play devil's advocate throughout this, the trouble with these, and don't get me wrong, there's a load of value that advisors add. But the trouble with these is it depends on the client. What if the client comes to you and he's 100% Vanguard life strategy, Vanguard 100 or something?
Yep.
So the rebalance done automatically. It's in the right asset allocation. So far you've added 0. And depending on where he ends up, there might be negative alpha. If he moves into one of these discretionary fund managers because he wants to have someone with a double-barreled name giving advice. The point being that these are very broad and generic. And yes, I get it, but I'm not buying the rebalancing.
Get it
as a significant value add. The asset allocation generally is, but we get clients coming to us who buy into the equity thing. That generally they just need a bit of help. I think we can carry on, because I think the bigger bigger value is in all the other things.
But there is one that we're all going to agree on. It's coming up. Wait for it. It's coming up. The suspense is killing me. Right, this one now, cost-effective implementation. Oh, I don't quite. In the old days, I think maybe if there was a higher barrier to entry, I think some advisors obviously detract because they charge high fees to implement. But anyway, let's just go with this one.
I don't even know what that means, really. That's kind of mean.
I'm a bit.
But advisors are charging, again, look at whatever the data is, between 1% and 3% of investment portfolios to implement.
I think typically, Alan, it's about sort of 2.4%.
Right, 2.4%. Whereas I can go on most platforms directly now for free. Right?
Oh, I get that.
So,
all right, let's move on to one that we potentially agree on. Behavioral coaching. Behavioral coaching, according to Vanguard, they haven't even got a range. They said this adds at least 1.5% a year.
Yeah.
I'm massively in agreement with that. You're getting the clients to get the clients to avoid doing the wrong thing at the wrong time for the wrong reasons, continually promoting great financial behavior, removing financial anxiety, and getting them to do the right things and stick with the plan. So behavioral coaching, I'm a massive yes to at least 1.5% a year.
But under no circumstances call it that. Nobody wants to hear that. Oh, you're going to
Manage my behavior.
Coach me. So I get what it is.
I'm okay with coaching. I'm okay with coaching. Use the word coaching with clients. Like if you know them well.
Yeah, I mean, and this obviously is based on, and there is plenty of data, although it is also questioned. Would you call that survey Dalbar?
Dalbar, yeah.
That has certainly been questioned by some experts.
Mind the gap, yeah.
Yeah, mind the gap. But it is true that there is a lot of correlation. You can see data with fund flows after this great, market sell-offs. People sell their equities. Having said that, so do a lot of professional advisors and investors. A lot of this money that's leaving portfolios is advised. So this is back to my point about it depends on the advisor.
Okay, so Ultra, the next thing on the topic of tidbits, yes, the JP Morgan Guide to Retirement.
I'm not sure if this has cropped up on the show before. It probably has, but it comes out every year. The famous JP Morgan Guide to the Markets comes out quarterly, US, UK, Europe versions, I believe. The JP Morgan Guide to Retirement is, again, retirement planning information overload. So it's worth scrolling through. It's 53 pages long, so there's a few pages that will take your eye. The one that sort of hits me quite between the eyes, and all my clients that we look after really, is a typical 65-year-old couple today, non-smokers and in excellent health. The chance of one of them getting to 90 is 73%. Again, this needs to be factored in when you're having grown-up conversations about attitude to investment risk. When you're 65, the money does not stop being invested. It's still got multi-decades ahead of itself. It still needs to be invested accordingly. So yeah, there's various bits of information in this JP Morgan Guide to Retirement. As I say, it's annually at the moment, and the 2024 one might have come out a few months ago, but I just came across it recently, and it's worth a few minutes for you to scroll through. Any points on that?
Yeah, it is very good. They put out a lot of good material, great use of imagery, graphics. You can grab what the point is they're trying to make really quickly. You could use it with client materials, I think, quite well. I always think, and again, I did pick this up from the Right Honourable Nicholas Lincoln some years ago, that these averages of life expectancy and so on, you can assume that your clients will on average live, let's say, 5 years more than these, which are national averages. Our clients tend to be more affluent, tend to live in better areas, look after themselves. So the percentages or the expectations or the life expectancy are likely to be more than.
Sorry, just to hammer it home, the study has picked up on that point. So a 65-year-old couple, typically one of them is getting to 90, it's 43%. But however, if they're non-smokers and in excellent health, most of our clients, let's just assume that it's 73%. So they factored that in. That's why I sort of highlighted that point. But yeah, good point, Alan.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the next one is me. So, well, Sam, you might even know this story. But you'll certainly know about what Powerball is, which is the sort of state-funded lottery.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. And this was an article that appeared in the Wall Street Journal, which I do subscribe to. It's really good. It's $14 a month or something. And I put a link to it in the so-called show notes. And I think you can access it because they give you a free link to share every few days. And that's should be an open link. Anyway, this couple, Minnesotan couple, Lutheran, so religious people, they won 60 million, 60 on the Powerball. Are you familiar with this story, Sam? You might haven't.
I actually haven't heard it yet. No.
Okay, so they won 60 million and they lost a grandchild to some horrible disease, Krebs disease, and they thought, you know what, we're going to put some of our winnings towards a foundation to look into research into this. They gave an advisor, a local advisor, just some mum and pop sort of shop guy working for an insurance company, 26 or 28 million of their 60 million winnings to set up a trust fund to do research into this. Anyway, this guy, and this will resonate more with you perhaps, Sam, than with us, he bought a series of variable annuities way back when with big ongoing fees, big upfront commissions, an absolute shit show. Long story short, years later, that $28 million was worth $26 million. It actually declined in the face of a soaring bull market, soaring S&P. The wife, she's passed away. It's just an absolute nightmare of just a story of incentives and conflicts. And this guy was not a fee-based advisor. He was getting paid through the variable annuities to recommend this tripe. And it's a charity as well, Sam. So my understanding is that variable annuities aren't even that good from a tax point of view for charities. You don't get.
I was just going to say that it's very interesting that they would fund anything for a foundation with a variable annuity.
It's horrible. And just to compare, the advisor concern's taken his own life, so he's not here to defend the advice he gave. So it's just a 60 million. They gave half of it to this advisor. Conflict of interest. We always think that the world we're living in is good people, good intentioned people. There are conflicts all the time, but you just need to minimize the conflicts to be able to give good advice. But there are always going to be conflicts, and we think that most of us do that really well. But there are still a large swathe, a large cadre of advisors out there who are doing things the old way and doing it badly. And that's
I think you hit on a thing though, like where I think one of the things that's so confusing for consumers is there's so many different people with so many models of business, but they're all called financial advisor. And so to the consumer, how do you tell the difference?
I think your story, Alan, might be quite typical of firms. I think when they're in their early stages, they're a bit more gung-ho, can be asked to fill in a 100-page form, got no clients, got a load of time. When you get busy, successful, and have clients, you don't want to be pissing around, spending hours and hours doing admin for some obscure publication. So I think that's probably quite a typical route that a lot of people go on. I mean, the awards we see now are ridiculous. It's like wealth management administration awards and back office, front office awards, and they're just making them up for the sake of it. There's almost like more people at the award show than there is in the whole industry that they're trying to award.
I think that's the point, isn't it?
Head around it.
That's the point. I mean, one of the awards I did go to, and when they've got awards for funds, and if you do like European emerging markets small cap blah 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 fund of the year. And by the time there's 72 awards, and the one I was at was like the second last award on, so you're like dying.
And there's always a comedian that's semi-famous doing the old hosting, which is normally quite funny. I don't know if you saw the other day, but like I'm going to name them because it was a public tweet. Scottish Widows got awarded for something, and some bloke on Twitter said, "Yeah, I've already put in 3 complaints to them this week." I mean, you can imagine I think
that was our friend Raj.
Best administration award, and they've got like 46,000 complaints or something. He just couldn't make it.
I think it was Raj Shah put that on Twitter because he's got an ongoing beef with widows at the minute. Our friend.
No, it was Elliot someone he's a listener. I think he works in Edinburgh. You know that dude. Anyway, no, I've never really entered awards. I don't think I ever really will. I find them quite painful. I see them online all the time. Obviously, it's quite a marketing thing. I sort of understand why people do it, and firms at a certain stage in their development. I mean, there's a lot of pay to play. Tables cost a lot of money. But I think people are impressed by them. Like a family member of ours won an award recently that was just like, but the whole family were just like, isn't it amazing, wonderful? Have you heard the news? So if a firm wins an award within a family that they're not insiders, they're impressed by this stuff. I was just like, I couldn't think of anything worse. But I played the game and congratulated, but inside I'm thinking it's a total waste of time.
But does that not talk to the point about clients might think that's a good thing?
Exactly that, Carl. That's what I'm saying. So being on the receiving end, a family member won like a marketing award. It was like the biggest news ever in our family. So the same would apply on the financial advisor side. Sorry, mate.
I think like to Alan's point about we've never won one client. Well, maybe not, but maybe the social proof of you winning the various awards helped you get clients across the line. I know, Alan, when I met you had just won the Financial Planning Firm of the Year award, and I thought, wow, that's amazing, or whatever, right? So, and we have entered awards before, and we've been delighted when we won them. And I think Andy's point is really well made that, if you're a kind of firm starting out, entering these things, I don't think is a bad idea at all. And giving your best shot to get a couple of them under your belt so that you can say that my peers have voted us the best in whatever. We don't have the amount of awards at all that you have over there. And I do see all of the ones that are over there. And it's like, as you're saying, we'll niche down all the awards. So basically there's one for everybody in the audience. With full disclosure, we've just applied for the Irish Times Great Places to Work Award. And I would really like to. Now that's a proper application, and I think we're into phase 2 of that at the moment. Might go nowhere. So if you hear nothing from me about that again, we didn't get it right. But that one would matter to me. And I would really, really like to get some acknowledgement that we're looking after our team and we're trying to, as best as we possibly can, create a great culture and a great place to work.
Most of the clients I take on now, I'm pretty sure I'm not really going to run out of money, just sort of the level I am, the clients I take on. But I've got a historical client bank that there's a few people that are quite close to the line.
Andy, the ultra crepidarian Andy. He knows about everything. Andy can't be told anything. His name is Andrew Hart. Andrew Hart!
Yeah, my final point is I'm sure there's lots of people listening to this who are at a certain point in their career that the new clients they take on are probably wealthier and unlikely to run out of money, but they've got a historical client bank of clients that are close to the line. But we feel an obligation to look after these people because they, came with us when we started out our businesses, originally. So they're the clients that we have to have a louder word in their ear. Anyway, that's my final point.
There's one thing about this group, the 4 of us in our private WhatsApp chat. There's some radical candor going on in there, I can tell you. There's no beating about the bush in that particular group. Telling the truth is really, really important to me and my company and colleagues. So much so that it's one of our 5 core values, 5 C's, which includes collaboration, creativity, and candor. And it works both externally and internally. Telling the truth to your colleagues as well, even when you've got a point that you disagree with, I think it's really important. There's books written on this subject. There's so many businesses that struggle because people aren't prepared to confront leaders, colleagues, or anything else. They've got a different view, different opinion, but they think, I'll just keep it to myself. I don't need the aggro in my life. I just think it's really important. We do our best in my business to try to always tell the truth. Do it professionally, do it politely, but tell the truth to each other. And of course, that applies to our relationships with clients. When I knew we were going to talk about this, I sort of reflected back on where we'd had challenges with clients, and some have worked by telling the truth and some haven't. There was a client we were speaking with a few years ago who was exactly in that thing, absolutely on track to run out of money relatively early and would not stop his spending habits. Used to bring his wife into the meetings, and all of a sudden she stopped appearing. And there's a dilemma there as well for us. Does the family, does the couple, does the other half know that they are heading for financial catastrophe 10 years from now if they carry on like this? And it was really awkward. And to the extent that we had a kind of just a meeting saying, we can't in all, good conscience carry on and advise you. We're telling you, you're heading for a slow motion car crash. Every year we engage, we update. And by the way, this was in the back of fantastic investment markets and investment returns. Had you gone through, which could have done at any time, a real significant market correction, which is, not only possible, but not only probable, but guaranteed, it would have been much, much worse. So I was constantly thinking, this is a real problem for us. And we said at one point, it was a kind of ultimatum. We are going to have to resign from managing your account. We came up with all sorts of alternatives and solutions and things in terms of how we could, manage the situation. And at the point of us just stepping away, said, we can't carry on. He said, no, fine. And it took that for him to change his spending habits. It was a lot of extra expense in terms of, quite expensive holidays, changing cars quite more regularly than he needed to do. And he's still a client now. And he's pretty much back on track. Yeah, he downgraded his lifestyle, moved to North Watford.
He's driving a Toyota.
He wasn't prepared to compromise on that. That's not a lifestyle. I don't know who would. Oh. Go on then, Nick.
Go on.
Was it my turn now? Thanks.
I heard something recently, you know, that it was just said by an influencer, right? So someone who people would say would know their stuff, saying, you know, if you want to retire early, then pick your date at age 50 and just do a Vanguard target date fund there, right? So it was nearly really good advice, but actually it was terrible advice. And it will, you know, get more conservative as you approach, and that'll protect your money and blah, blah, blah. And again, just to say, I appreciate there are some specific scenarios where it might be appropriate, but that's the beauty of financial planning and cash flow modeling, where you actually do the specific planning and the specific modeling. So, you know, it's just, it's driving me insane. You guys know it's driving me insane because I've told you all in our WhatsApp group. It's actually quite difficult to, we know, and I suppose the reason I know is because I grew up in the world where I was taught how to do it the wrong way. So I worked for one of the big banks. I was a product seller. I have made all the mistakes. So I'm not saying that I haven't been there and done poor things, because I was also affected by the brainwashing. And I suppose in the product selling world, you've got the provider number one, the insurance company. You've got the broker, the intermediary number two, and then you've got the client is way further down. And that's why we set up Metas Ireland, which was to flip it and put the client at the top all the time. But it's difficult when you're out there on your own saying, not on our own. There are plenty of other really good firms doing it, but you've got these massive brands who are just trying to cream massive fees off high net worth individuals. And these high net worth individuals, number one, don't know what they're paying. And number two, believe that they're being offered the best possible advice. And I'm beginning to feel that sometimes perhaps people know that this is not the best thing for their clients. That's a ballsy statement, I know. And
yeah, no. It's amazing what a man will believe. If his
I wonder also,
whatever the
Carl, how much of this stuff that they're kind of effectively locked in, or there's big tax consequences. I wonder how much of that is done intentionally, just to make these assets sticky, just to make as many barriers as possible. You know, how much of it is a core part of their investment philosophy? We believe in all these private equities things, and how much to say, yeah, but no one can get out of this for 5 years or whatever. I think they're cynical enough.
These floating rate notes
funds
and stuff, they're locked in.
Structured products we come up against all the time. I've got this for another 3 years, and if I can't take it out now, there's huge penalties and take it out. So let's just leave that in for and it's just. They would say we believe in this as a part of our asset.
You call them something much sexier than that. Just call them auto callables.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
And now I'm in a complex investment product, and I think it's a really good idea.
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, go back to keeping it simple, stupid. It's like
no.
Right?
That's the rub of this whole thing. Complexity, weirdly, is easy to sell. Simplicity is incredibly hard to sell in this business. Just think about a thought experiment. Someone just sold their business, £10 million, £20 million. They go and see a private bank. They literally do a 3-hour presentation of complete guff, create a multi-asset mess. Sounds amazing. 28 different lines, items. You can't see the wood for the trees. They leave and go, yeah, that seems like it's okay, darling. They go and see one of us and we go, here's the solution. Put your £10 million in that one fund. It's super cheap. He's going to do everything you want over the next 50 years. And it's a 2-minute pitch. Complexity is weirdly easy to sell in this business. Simplicity is very hard to sell.
100%.
The multi-asset thing crops up a lot. I call them a multi-asset mess. People call them a multi-asset fund. They're a multi-asset mess. The longer you're in this business, the more you understand how investment management works, and basically you try and simplify. So I believe the only 2 asset classes a client should have is global equities and global bonds. Ideally, way more global equities. We see it all the time. The DFMs, the people that have these, but that's their whole remit. They don't do any financial planning. They don't do any behavioral coaching. So all you are paying them for is investment management. So by default, they're going to create something that is very convoluted. And obviously has high charging fees applied to it. And the stickier it is to the firm, the better. Back to Alan's point, so it's harder for them to move. Clients, it's the IKEA effect. They did the thinking and chose the person, then they want to stick to them. You rock up and say, that was a terrible mistake. They've just absolutely hammered your wealth for the last 5 years. The portfolio they've created is just full of low returns. Again, they don't want to feel silly. Again, that's the point that you're mentioning, Cole. You find it hard to basically say what these jokers have created is just a load of crap, and now we need to try and unravel it. So yeah, there's many moving parts of it. The good news is a lot of these one fund solutions that we know very well and talk about, and a lot of our clients potentially are in them. On the risk scale, they're now 5s out of 7s. We know the whole risk scale is total BS, but at least finally they're realizing that 100% global equity portfolio is not an 11 out of 10. It's not a 10 out of 10. It's not far up there. It's way further down. So yeah, it is slowly turning. And some bond funds during the madness of 2022 turned into 6 out of 7s. It's
the Vanguard
ridiculous,
fund,
but I think
didn't it? Vanguard reassessed their bond fund and went from super low risk to being the highest one of all. But that was after, that was after the event,
to 6 out of 7s.
Yeah, but that was after. That was in hindsight.
Yeah, exactly. It's ridiculous.
Trying to put the toothpaste back in the tube. Ridiculous. Okay, another scam. This time it's not an Irish one, so we're going to bring it up with some more UK-based scams.
I know. It seems like these UK scams are few and far between these days. Hopefully the regulator has been doing their job. Okay, so this one, brace yourselves, was an art investment stroke fraud. A company called Smith & Partner. Sounds very fancy. So the article was about a 31-year-old gold trader. He was the person that got scammed. He was looking for 64.6% in the first 12 months. So clearly this gold trader is an investing illiterate. But anyway, he went ahead and surprise, it went belly up. I mean, it's not nice that people create these scams to obviously defraud people. But for me, fraud and scams fall into two different categories. There's a deception fraud, which someone is like rung up and told that their bank's closing down, they need to move money, and someone's been deceived into taking action, but they haven't gone into it with the intention to make money. The different type of fraud is called a greed fraud. You've gone into that fraud in the intention of making money. It's turned out that you've been defrauded, and then you've gone crying to someone. So this is a greed fraud. The worst part of this story, the guy, this 31-year-old gold trader, has tried to go after HSBC, his bank, to claim the money back after this investment, which is not an investment, speculation, blew up. It's madness. I mean, it's not sort of poor old banks, but my God, having to deal with these types of people, investing illiterates that just throw their money here, there, and everywhere, and then going after the banks and them having to have a compliance department and a complaints department to deal with all this sort of stuff. Apparently, there's another company dealing with all the victims of this fraud. They've submitted 40 claims to 12 banks for £2.1 million. They're all going after the banks that facilitated them move around their own money. Anyway, these things
So what's the complaint against the bank? That the bank, the client, the person, the investor instructed the bank to move money to this account to get into this thing.
Just like normal transfers,
and they're saying that the bank shouldn't have allowed it.
The bank should have known it was a scam, I think is the gist of it.
I mean, this guy might as well sue his parents for lack of financial education. Like, let's get it at his root. Let's get it at his root. Don't go after the banks. Go after your mum and dad. Again, the good we do, the harm we help our clients avoid. Again, all these people that caught up in this scam, I can't remember. I think, okay, here it is. It's 13.8 million was invested by 1,000 people. So each person was 14 grand in. Nobody with real money is going to be doing a 14 grand punt. These are all, not affluent individuals. So again, investing in financial illiterates. Anyway, it boils my blood that this guy is going after HSBC.
Well, he's desperate. Anyway. He's looking for anyone at all that could possibly help.
It's gone to FOS as well, Alan. It's gone to FOS. I mean, obviously it's an unregulated investment. So FOS saying it's nothing to do with us. I mean, it could have landed on our laps. Is that right?
Potentially. Anyway. Do you know if you ever try to send money, if you just, I bank with NatWest.
Even if you try and send money to yourself, Alan, these days, they ask you 49 questions.
Exactly.
You've got to fill in you know,
I just send
14 different
100
codes.
quid to somebody. It's like, do you know this person? Is it a friend? And you say it's a friend. You say, do you know? And you do have to ask. There's a lot of barriers to encourage people to think twice before they send money.
And then at the end they go, "Are you sure?"
Yeah, I know.
Yes, I am sure.
Sometimes I've said to someone, "No, I've sent you that 100 quid. I've sent you the 50 quid."
Yeah.
They said, "No, you haven't." I said, "Yes, I have."
Yeah.
It's because I didn't hit the 9th.
Yeah,
yes.
exactly.
I was like, no, I definitely. They're like, Andy, no, I'm not letting
that
your
old
kids go
trick.
until you.
That old trick.
I see.
I'm like, no, I definitely paid you. I definitely paid you yesterday. And it's like, no, you didn't. You didn't scroll up 44 pages to click the final agree. Anyway, back to you, Nick.
This isn't our final episode of the year, is it?
Oh,
that's what we're going to
That's what we're going to put together our greatest hits.
YouTube Shorts. Just do the YouTube Shorts.
Make AI do it. Come on.
No, I'm not doing anything. I'm not doing anything. I'm not doing anything.
Are you closing shop for the year now?
Well, I'm not doing that. I'm not.
I know Carl
putting
did this about 2 weeks ago.
This is giving everybody a good insight as to how
I was
our
going to
chats
say,
go
you're
on.
talking
why don't
about
you shut the fuck up?
demonetized again, Nick. Demonetized again.
Yeah. Sorry for that lady who drives in the car with the children. Sorry.
It's school holidays now. She must.
So you're saying the show that we're going to put out on the 2nd of January is going to be the best of. Great. Okay. Get someone to chop up the best of.
Right.
That's hopefully going to be the case. Yeah.
Why don't we just talk about this once we've concluded the recording?
Right. Okay, everybody.